بمديح الهادي تنتظم، ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Finding Me on the ITV networks. Once again here at AMAC, at the Sheraton in Pretoria, where AMAC is hosting a very special conference between state and society. And with me, an amazing guest, a young gentleman, Palestinian origin, Tariq is a professor at the Center for Conflict and Humanitarian Studies at the Doha Institute of Graduate Studies. He's also been an academic and research fellow at the Ibrahim Abu Lugard Institute of International Studies, and he also was part of the Center for Development Studies at Birzeit University, and that is in Palestine itself. So with that, I'd like to say assalamu alaikum and thank you very much for being here.
Alaikum assalam, thank you very much for hosting me.
I know it's always challenging, you know, going back and coming into this country, and if you consider the two histories, the intertwining of the two histories and the similarities, I suppose it must be raising a lot of emotional feelings inside of you, and then your thoughts must be racing. You see South Africa almost free, and you look at Palestine and you wonder when the freedom will come. Has these thoughts ever crossed your mind?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, the experience of South Africa is always an integral component of us and our anti-colonial struggle. The South African experience has been always narrated among the different political forces and the social constituents in Palestine, and currently it is becoming more and more valid to look at South African anti-apartheid experience to learn more, because, you know, since like the past 20 years, the term apartheid has been used to describe the situation in Palestine. As I said, it's not only apartheid, you know, it's a colonial structure and so on, but apartheid with the construction of the separation wall, segregation, more discriminatory and racist policies by the Israeli colonial forces, apartheid is becoming more and more valid point to. So I think there are many things to learn from South Africa. For sure there are similarities, but also there are differences. And at this point, I believe now there should be more focus on the South African experience, especially by creating networks and collaboration among the different Palestinian actors, including civil society organizations and political forces with South African friends.
Tariq, is it possible at all to create a shift in power? Because this is a power play, what is happening in Israel and Palestine. To get a shift in play with only solidarity like a country like South Africa, or do you think that we need far more support? And not only I'm talking about the Western European states, but I'm talking about the Arab involvement in general, and other Muslim majority countries, Indonesia, Pakistan, India, Turkey, all of these countries.
You are right. The Palestinian cause is the center of global politics anyway. It's not something that can be resolved power dynamics between Palestinians and Israelis, but it involves the wider, broader Arab and regional context, as well as the world at large. You know, even the conflict was created through the intervention of global powers at the time, and Britain, and then Europe, and now currently the United States. But I should admit now we are living in a worst situation in Palestine since 1948. Especially because of the crisis in the region, the excessive sort of political polarization that remains in the region. So there's now more attention on other causes in the region, like Syria, Libya, Yemen, and also the success of the Zionist lobby in the West to downgrade the Palestinian cause. So the rise of populism, fascism, and right-wing politics in the West also is making this cause deteriorating. However, if we look at the positive side, we've seen some good achievement, I would say, by transnational actors like the BDS, which is a Palestinian initiative, which managed to reach some important institutions in the West, including universities, academia, municipalities, to foster the idea of boycotting Israel, pressure, and sure, South Africa. So this is a good side, but it's not enough for sure. I want, for example, look at BDS as a national liberation movement. It's only a tool It's a good tool. It ameliorates also the anti-apartheid resistance in South Africa in a way. So for us, it's be a great input to maintain the South African solidarity, but absolutely is not enough. So yeah, we still need to work more, especially to restructure the Palestinian national movement and to rethink a newer strategy. So any change should come from the Palestinians themselves overall. They are the people who should lead the struggle and consequently find different strategies to influence international public opinions and states.
So in your presentation today, you spoke about undermining the national agenda. You speak about this through the NGOization. What do you mean by that?
Well, Palestinian civil society has played key roles in the pre-Oslo era, especially in the decades of 1970s and 1980s. And to be specific here, I'm talking about Palestinian civil society that exists in territories occupied in post-1967 territories, like West Bank and Gaza Strip. There are different forms of civil societies among the Palestinians inside Israel and in exile. Civil society at that time functioned as an extension of the national liberation movement. So even defining Palestinian civil society is extremely different than regular civil society, the state, and so on. No, we had a complete absence of a state, but there was a national movement represented by PLO at that time, which fostered the emergence of revolutionary civil society, as reflected in a wide range of organizations, grassroots and mass-based movements, women movements, student movements, specialized committees, and so on. Played very important roles in the mobilization of the people, in raising the awareness, anti-colonial knowledge production, and so on, and was expressed very interestingly during the first Intifada in particular. However, after the signing of the Oslo Accords between the PLO and the Israeli government and the entry of international aid, a large segment of these organizations were transformed into provisional, elitist, developmentist NGOs that became gradually detached from grassroots and the political dynamics on the ground and became more interested in implementing top-down projects funded by Western donors in particular.
They were driving the agenda, basically.
Exactly. They were like implementing foreign agenda in a way that aimed to stabilize the so-called peace process, to maintain the repressive status quo, and to deny the need for political and mass-based mobilization, as things used to happen before Oslo. So since then, actually, the Palestinian civil society has been undergoing a period of stagnation, inability to, and unwillingness to influence changes and dynamics on the ground.
So it's almost a form of pacification.
Exactly.
So you take away the willpower and you take away the motivation, and more importantly, you control the agenda through the economics. Right?
It fits in one another, firstly, with the neoliberal policies of the Palestinian Authority, which is conditioned and supported by international financial institutions, especially the World Bank, but on the other hand, by Israeli strategy of economic peace, which intends to, pacify people through economic privileges to some extent, in order to exclude popular mobilization and being active participant in politics. So NGOs comes here to play this negative role through creating a network of people who are benefiting from, for example, international development industry, international aid, and so on.
And you depoliticize.
Yeah, it's created like a solid middle class that is benefiting from social and economic privileges granted by international funding agencies. Those people are not really interested in creating meaningful and progressive change on the ground, because they don't want to lose these privileges.
And I suppose they want to keep the status quo. But we have to go to a break. When we come back, I would like you to talk a little bit about the political economy of occupation. So we'll see you after the break.
بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah and welcome to the second segment of Finding Me Today in the ITV networks. This time with a young gentleman, a dynamic mind. Tariq is at the Center for Conflict and Humanitarian Studies at the Doha Institute of Graduate Studies, and we're speaking about the political economy of Palestine. Tariq, I mean, there is certainly a political economy in terms of Palestine, but there's a political economy was related to the occupation itself. And one of the key what shall I say, ideas of BDS and the soundbite of BDS is always to say that, like, why don't have BDS? And the argument has been make the occupation expensive. How do you see these two economies and how are they related to each other? Will it continue because, of course, there's always financial benefit for the oppressor?
Most of us focus on the politics or the other political perspective to analyze the situation. The economic side is largely neglected. However, if we go back to the occupation of 1967, since its early phase, it used economic methods to control the Palestinian society in the West Bank and Gaza. It used different political economy strategies in order to pacify the population and to control. You know, if you have a solid economic base, then you can have stronger political reaction. Yeah. So what happened is that they allowed the Palestinians to have, at the beginning, a sort of economic prosperity, but this was fake.
But only in certain areas, right? Like if you compare economic prosperity in the West Bank, it's very different to what you find in Gaza.
Right. This is, we're talking now about like past 10 or 15 years. Right. But since the early phase of the occupation, there was like similar economic situation at the beginning. Israel also destroyed all productive sector in Palestine, including medium to small industries, plus agricultural sector. So it can control everything. Now, when it allowed some Palestinians to go to work in Israel, it meant that through having income, they can pacify, don't think about struggle, so they would just spend their time working all the time. But this strategy was further developed after Oslo.
Okay.
With the intervention of international financial institutions and aid and creating patron-client system within the Palestinian Authority, to extend its influence over the largest possible segment of society to make them like people who get benefits.
So you create patronage networks, basically.
Yeah.
And you keep people who are not going to bite the hand that feeds them, right?
Exactly, but this increased dramatically since 2007 after the divide between Fatah and Hamas, subsequently between the West Bank and Gaza Strip, in which there was a new government installed in Ramallah that adopted excessive neoliberal policies that included, for example, bank reforms. So it opened up debts, loans to people. Anyone wants anything, just can come to the bank, gets loans, buy your house, get married, buy a car, promoting the consumer's culture in Ramallah. So, or the West Bank generally. So many people found themselves eventually trapped into this sophisticated network of debt in which you should stay for 10, 15, or 20 years just paying back your debts. So you are no longer interested in following the public interest or thinking critically about the political situation. You just become a slave to the system.
Right.
At the same time, they give the impression that, wow, in the West Bank, people are living happily.
Yes.
So I'm having like modern cars, modern businesses, and so on.
And it's amazing
But
you say
also,
that because there was an academic from South Africa who recently went to Palestine. And he said to him, oh my God, when you enter Ramallah, you'll never say that you're in Palestine, you know?
Exactly.
There's all of these, this, and this, and he mentioned the luxuries, the amenities, the entertainment, etc. And then on the other hand, you have Hebron and you have Gaza, etc. It's something totally different.
yeah, a tremendous disparity
Yes.
within the West Bank itself, but also to give this fake impression that Palestinians are fine under the occupation, so why not? We call it Ramallah bubble. It's not actually based on any logical basis of any economy. It's a completely rentier economy that's structurally dependent on Israel, first of all, and on international aid. So if they, for example, halt international aid for a few months, everything will collapse immediately. At the same time, in order to give lessons to Gazans, like see your fellow people in the West Bank, they are happy. So you need to follow them. Just get rid of the resistance and just surrender to us. This is why, this is why Gazans are under siege. They are trying further and further to exert social, economic, and political pressures on Gazans, so they may revolt against Hamas government there, to be against the Palestinian resistance, and therefore to accept dictates and conditionalities of Israel, international donors, and the West at large.
So with this absolute divide and rule, because that's what it is, it's about divide and rule. And then of course you trap people into material want and material pleasures. If the condition has come to that right now in Palestine as we see it, how then are you going to get a unified population that can challenge the Israeli occupation?
Well, consciously people are unified. The problem is with the Palestinian political parties and forces that are divided among themselves, especially between Fatah and Hamas. And there seems that we will not be witnessing any serious reconciliation in the near future. Instead, we see that all these powers, including Israel, but also some Arab states and the Americans are dividing further and further and to want to create or to institutionalize this separation between the West Bank and Gaza Strip. So the point is that we have many serious problems within Palestinian house that should be drastically reformed by the Palestinians themselves. And I no longer believe in the reform, for example, of PLO or the historic or classical Palestinian national movement. I believe the new generation should take this initiative and embark on new strategy, create their new movements, and create new consciousness for the upcoming generations. This is long-term struggle, and therefore we should expect another decades until we can achieve our basic objectives of liberation and self-determination.
So what you speak about is when you're speaking about faith and hope in the new generation, of course, and embarking on new strategies and new policies, also very much what we relate to in terms of decolonization, that don't keep doing the same thing that the elders have been doing, or don't carry on the behaviors of the past. We need to find a new way. How important is decolonization now as a narrative, as an ideology, and as an understanding amongst Palestinians?
This is a fatal mistake of Palestinian national movement. The concept of liberation and decolonization are, basic objectives as represented by the Palestinian national character of PLO during the 1960s, but then has changed 70s, 80s, and they then adopted the concept of state. So this is why Oslo was signed, that they wanted to create a state. There is no mention liberation or decolonization. So it's not only a mistake, it's something hysterical, something that contradicts all previous experiences of national liberation movement, is that you have to resist, liberate your land and people, and then establish your state. What happened to us is the opposite. You want to establish a state before any liberation. So it's a fatal mistake. Israel managed to co-opt Palestinian national movement and to transform it into effective mechanism of indirect colonial role.
What we now call neo-colonialism also. It's a continuation of the colonialism.
It's a mixture of classical colonialism, neo-colonialism, and it's a very sophisticated. This is why it's a peculiar case here when it comes to Palestine. So now, for sure, everyone admits, including officials, that two-state solution is no longer applicable.
Right?
And some people would say, okay, there is only one state from the river to the sea, but this state is racist, it's based on apartheid, it's discriminatory, it's so on and so on. So we need to struggle within this state to achieve one democratic, secular state that can be also binational state for all its citizens. This is one future scenario. But this is at the same time old scenario because it was the early program of the PLO. But then now some people are thinking how to revive the idea of one state, especially from newer generation of Palestinians. But I believe this will take time and years to come, especially for next generation to realize that there is no other game in town only to demand one state.
Yeah. So final question before I let you go, and that is about the Jewish, the pronouncement about Israel as a state for the Jews, the latest law that was passed. What is the response to that?
Oh, currently there is no serious response by Palestinian official circles, the Palestinian Authority. Only accusations that Israel is becoming a racist state, is a fascist state, is a communist state. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a diplomatic way to talk to the world by Palestinian officials. But, many Palestinians, like myself, it's already a state for Jewish. It has always been. Even before the establishment, I mean, the Zionist movement was created actually to achieve a Jewish state or a state for Jews. And this is, the basic title of Herzl, the founder of Zionism. So it's nothing new to us. It just became law. But it was exercised and practiced officially at the level of Israeli state institutions all the time. So nothing new to us.
A parting comment to my viewers, what would you like to leave them with?
Let's keep and develop these solidarity networks for now. I believe that we, the Palestinians, should lead and begin with a new strategy, and you have all to be involved and engage with us.
Yeah, and to share the creative ideas, because on the one hand, if you look at the Jewish state, there's this joke that goes around and says South Africa invented apartheid, but the Israelis perfected it. So let the South Africans and the Palestinians get together now and break down this perfection.
Exactly, and still much to learn from South Africa.
Definitely, but thank you very much, Tariq, for sharing your time, for sharing your thoughts. Fi amanillah, wassalamu alaikum, till we meet again.
قسما بالله رب العالمين ما ارتضينا غير دين الله دين فهو دين الحق دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء هذا الدر وهذه الكلم بمديح الهادي